Tonight we will enter a world where music is not just about melodies, but about untold stories. Voices that touch millions of hearts, songs that transcend time, but behind the bright stage lights, there are secrets, fears, and choices that the public has never seen. This is not a story about fame or awards, but about real people, about what they have to hide to live with the music they love. Let's turn the pages of memories where each note contains passion, loneliness, and secrets that only music can tell. Luther Vandross had a voice that sent shivers down one's spine, as if the music could reach deep into the soul. But beyond the glittering stage lights and thunderous applause, his real life was strangely quiet, almost a separate world that few could enter. Luther lived as if he were looking at life through a transparent glass. Everyone saw the perfect, glamorous image, but no one knew what existed behind it. During the 1970s and 1980s, when his career was at its peak, Luther gradually withdrew from the public eye. He limited his appearances, avoided photo shoots, and even refused stylists' advice on beauty or image changes. Music became his only way to connect with the world, because for Luther, personal relationships were both rare and fragile. Close friends recounted that he was always reserved, keeping his smile hidden, every word carefully considered, as if afraid that if he opened his heart, everything would go out of control. Fame brought him fame, but also pushed him into deep loneliness. A single news story or an exaggerated photo was enough to make Luther withdraw close his heart and build solid walls around his life. And so while the audience was intoxicated by the melodies of love, he quietly faced the feelings of longing that were never satisfied. Luther sang about love not only with his voice, but also with his wounds, loneliness, and appreciation of every precious moment of life. Each note was a confession that Marvin Gaye, a musical genius capable of turning society's wounds into immortal melodies. But behind the spotlight, his life was a series of silent struggles, addiction, paranoia, intense conflict with his father, and deep loneliness created a Marvin completely different from the public image known. In August 1982, a Motown employee discovered a set of personal letters which had never been published. Just a few days later, the information reached Marvin, and he immediately withdrew from the U.S. In Belgium, he lived like a fugitive, closed curtains, refused to open fan letters, always convinced that someone was watching him. Even when recording Midnight Love, the fear of being discovered still haunted him, making him reserved, distant, and always alert. When he returned to the U.S. in 1983, Marvin looked old, tired, and still carried an invisible fear. His music resonates everywhere, but the story of the man behind the melodies is a silent tragedy, a loneliness that only music can understand. Marvin Gaye passed away, leaving behind a legacy filled with emotion, but also a testament to the deep scars that the spotlight cannot hide. Teddy Pendergrass, the undisputed sex symbol of R&B, a storm of energy, stage presence, and charisma. Women fainted at concerts, men were jealous, and Teddy himself seemed to have his destiny in his hands. But any illusion of control was shattered one night, in March 1982. His Rolls-Royce crashed into a tree on Lincoln Drive in Philadelphia, breaking his spine and changing Teddy's entire life. What shocked him more than the physical injuries was the mysterious passenger sitting next to him. He left only the name John Doe and disappeared from the hospital just hours after the accident. Teddy's management immediately shut down all information, restricted medical access, and confiscated his records. Rumors spread from there, but the real answer was never revealed. After the accident, Teddy changed completely. He withdrew from his friends, fired his colleagues, limited his public contact, and always kept his grief to himself. He recorded every detail in a small notebook, even crying when he woke up from surgery, afraid that everyone had talked about that fateful night. Although he returned to the stage with music, the darkness of that night always followed, and the silence about the mysterious passenger followed Teddy for the rest of his life. Donny Hathaway, a musical genius who seems to be able to hear sounds that others never hear. But that talent, instead of bringing freedom, becomes a burden. For Donny, every note is too emotional, every light is too bright, and every darkness is too close. He becomes so sensitive that his mental stress increases to the point that Atlantic Records secretly sets up a private medical team to protect his health, keeping everything sensitive from the public eye. But the anxiety does not stop. Donny begins to hear voices. No one else hears, sees shadows. No one else sees. He fears that someone is watching, that his private secrets may be exposed. An important notebook where he recorded his personal relationships and thoughts suddenly disappears, making his fear even worse. On the night of January 13th, 1979, Donny left the studio mid-set, distraught and exhausted. Just hours later, he was found dead on the sidewalk, having fallen from a high floor. The details surrounding his death, his scratched hospital bracelet, his fears about a stolen notebook remain a mystery. Donny Hathaway's music will live on, but his story of fear, loneliness, and deep secrets is a world most audiences will never see. Billy Preston, a man who always walked between two worlds, the church and the spotlight. At home, his mother asked him to maintain a serious, pure image according to Christian doctrine. But in the music industry, Billy was raised to be a keyboard superstar, sparkling and attractive. Living between these two opposite poles, conflict was inevitable. An event that made everything tense occurred on October 4, 1974, at BBC Television Centre, when Billy was preparing to record with Elton John. According to witnesses, he argued fiercely with a strange man in an empty corridor. The exchange was heavy and tense before both disappeared through the emergency exit. The stranger left without registering, violating all procedures, and the footage recording the scene later mysteriously disappeared. The news spread quickly. The tabloids turned it into a private story, and his hometown church and mother reacted furiously, demanding that he return to correct the wrong impression. Instead of confronting him, Billy locked himself in his hotel room for 2 days, even smashing a lamp when reporters knocked on the door. He later requested a separate dressing room, a separate elevator, a separate entrance, anything to protect himself from misunderstanding and accusation. The mysterious man in the BBC corridor remains a mystery that Billy will never fully understand in his entire life. Jackie Wilson, the stage's Mr. Excitement, a man of energy always making audiences scream and ecstatic. But when the curtain closed, the public never saw his real world. A maze of violent secrecy and carefully controlled fantasies of masculinity. On February 15, 1961, in a Manhattan apartment, Jackie was shot in the stomach. The official report blamed a jealous girlfriend for pulling the trigger, but a second file later revealed numerous strange fingerprints on the gun, including some that did not match either the girlfriend or Jackie. The file quickly disappeared, and the male dancer who was supposed to be with Jackie that night was never questioned. Brunswick Records intervened to erase all unconfirmed evidence, and the final report retained only the girlfriend's confession, erasing all other details. The incident changed Jackie forever. He became paranoid, drank heavily, fired his bodyguards, and was always cautious in all his activities. On stage, he was still brilliant. But behind the lights, Jackie lived, with fear and pressure not to reveal his true self. He pounded on his wardrobe, repeating, "They can't know. They can't know." Mr. Excitement always existed in the light, but the real wounded and fearful self never stepped out. Little Richard, the man who always ran away from himself. On stage, he shone, exploded, and captivated the audience with every beat of the music. But behind the lights, Little Richard lived in invisible fear, running away from things only he could see. One night in October 1957, in room 212 of a Sydney hotel, the butler came in to deliver towels and froze when he saw Richard facing a tall man in a gray suit, his voice urgent, too close, too familiar. Richard, with a look of utter horror on his face, left the room canceled. The entire tour took only 2 suitcases and booked a flight back to America. The public heard a religious explanation, but the truth was that Richard felt his privacy had been violated, a secret that would destroy him, if revealed. Before boarding the plane, he tore out every page of his scrapbook and threw his performance costume into the fire as an act of purification. 6 months later, he returned to rock music with renewed vigor. But the swings between preacher and stage star lasted for years. Each transformation was an attempt to conceal the haunting memories of that Sydney hotel room. Only close friends heard him admit, "If they knew who I really was, they would burn my records." Little Richard didn't just make rock music dangerous, he lived as if danger lurked everywhere. Sam Cooke, the soul gentleman, with a captivating voice, but a life surrounded by unspoken secrets. Not only the stage, but also the backstage and waiting room are filled with ghosts. A strange man, always dressed in a dark suit, first appeared on March 2nd, 1964, backstage at the Miami Auditorium, standing in the darkness, watching Sam rehearse. When approached, he disappeared without a word. 2 days later, at the Chicago Regal, the figure appeared again, cold and emotionless. This time, Sam asked security to take him out, but the seat was empty without a trace. The incident repeated in Cleveland, where a fan took a blurry photo of the man, but the negative disappeared from the evidence room within 24 hours. At the same time, the FBI was watching Sam for his civil rights activities, wiretapping his phones, questioning the band, and closely following his hotel check-in. Rumors spread that someone was trying to fabricate a story to undermine Sam's growing political power. Then came December 11th, 1964. The night Sam was shot at a motel in Los Angeles. Official accounts were contradictory. The motel manager changed his story several times. A bellboy claimed to have seen a man in a dark suit leave just before the police arrived. To this day, no one knows if the figure really existed or if it was just the embodiment of secrets Sam carried with him all his life. Al Green, before he became a preacher, was a man on the run from an unseen ghost. The infamous incident on October 18, 1974, at Hot Grits, where he was severely burned, was just the beginning of a series of hauntings. As Al made his way to the Tabernacle Church in Memphis, worshippers began to notice a figure standing outside the window, a tall man in a long coat, always silent, watching Al from afar. First confirmed on January 12, 1975, and then repeatedly appearing on the following days, this man never blinked, never said a word. On February 2nd, a deacon followed after practice and witnessed the man enter a narrow hallway, but when he turned the corner, it was completely empty. Doors locked, windows boarded, no way out. Rumors spread. Was the stalker a former colleague or a jealous rival? Some whispered that he held a secret that could destroy Al's ministry. When the press came calling, Al went completely silent, canceling interviews, increasing security, and changing his routine. During late-night Bible studies, Al muttered, "Some sins don't die, they just wait in the dark." No one knew what that really meant. The man behind the church was never identified, and Al Green carried the silence about this ghost with him for the rest of his life, like a secret he could never share. Rick James, the god of funk, but also a man living in a glass cage of suspicion. The story begins not with famous scandals or cocaine, but with a mysterious tape. A video sent to MTV in May 1983, unlabeled, captured Rick backstage in moments that executives feared would turn into scandal. As soon as the tape was played, all alarms sounded. Rick stormed into the MTV building in the middle of the night wearing sunglasses, snarling, "Nobody see." Nobody copies of the tape quickly disappeared, but rumors spread. Fans say Rick replaced the entire dance crew limited cameras backstage, only entering the dressing room when all mirrors were covered. At a rehearsal in 1984, Rick is said to have smashed the camera when he saw the flashing red light, shouting, "No more surprises, I know how they trap me." By the late 1980s, Rick was living in a state of paranoia, witnessing betrayal everywhere, even among those closest to him. He slept with his belongings blocking hotel doors, wary of all eyes. The tape was never found. Some believe it was destroyed. Others believe a copy still exists quietly waiting. Rick James, not just a funk star, but a man hunted by his past. Barry White, the man of flowing melodies and silk suits with his deep bass and vibrant orchestra as a veil of secrecy. In public, he was the embodiment of love and charm. But behind the scenes, Barry lived in absolute caution, protecting what the world was not allowed to see. It all began in August 1979, when a Nassau paparazzi photographed Barry strolling on the beach with a male designer he had collaborated with. The photo was not immediately scandalous, but the implications were enough to make the record label nervous. Within 2 days, 20th Century Records executives bought the negatives and burned them in the parking lot with Barry watching from his limousine, his face silent and inscrutable. After that event, Barry became extremely cautious. Backstage staff say every hallway had to be cleared before he entered, and he kept a locked file marked personal. Even his wife was forbidden to touch it. In the 1990s, as his health declined and tabloids surrounded him, Barry remained fiercely protective of himself and his musical legacy. He once told his stylist, "Love can break hearts, but false rumors can ruin lives." Barry White left locking away all his secrets, leaving the world to see only his light, his love, and his music. Bobby Womack, a rebel in the world of R&B, always lived as if he dared anyone to control him. His life was full of scandals, marriage to Sam Cooke's widow, quarrels with the band, and then a deep dive into drug addiction. But the most intense rumors did not come from women, but from a man who always followed him. In March 1986, Bobby showed up at the Soul Train office with a new assistant. Marcus, a quiet guy who always walked 2 steps behind, carried his bag and opened the door for him. The media called Marcus mysterious, and the fans found him too familiar. The climax came at a press conference in Detroit on July 22nd when a reporter asked if Marcus was more than an assistant. Bobby got angry, slammed his hand on the table, stood up and walked out, and then fired the entire PR team for not being able to handle the question. Things got stranger. Bobby and Marcus always booked adjacent hotel rooms, but used a side exit to avoid the cameras. Bobby was seen pushing Marcus backstage, yelling, "You can't destroy me." Just 2 weeks later, Marcus disappeared without explanation, without a trace. Bobby never mentioned his name again, even as he confessed everything else in his life. He fell silent when it came to 1986. The stories about Marcus faded over time, but the darkness surrounding that event still hung over Bobby Womack's life. Johnny Gill, a powerful baritone, entered New Edition as a pillar of strength amid a chaotic boy band. But the stability everyone expected never materialized. The music industry was not only interested in his voice, but also haunted by his silence. The first rumors exploded in February 1990 when a Los Angeles DJ hinted that Johnny was living with a male friend while rehearsing for the album. No names, no evidence, but enough for the tabloids to rush out the sensational version. Over the next 15 years, more than 20 articles repeated similar allegations, from backstage sightings, shady sources, to blurry photos, showing Johnny standing too close to band members. One magazine even claimed he was living with another R&B star in Atlanta, an article that nearly cost the editor his job. On June 3, 1996, Johnny received a draft of a newspaper article detailing secret relationships. He immediately called a lawyer preparing to sue. The article was removed hours before printing documents disappeared and sources were silenced. After that event, Johnny completely changed, avoiding parties, refusing to take pictures with male fans unless accompanied, even stopping interviews mid-sentence. When sensitive questions arose, band members noticed that he was always tense, as if waiting for the next big news. Decades later, when asked about the rumors, Johnny simply said, "Some people don't want the truth, they just want a story." Charlie Wilson. The sole survivor of the Gap Band is a testament to the power of perseverance, but his path was not always smooth before becoming a beloved R&B icon. Charlie endured a decade of darkness where addiction, homelessness, and rumors nearly wiped him out. It all began on a rainy November night in 1987 in a recording studio in North Hollywood. A technician recalls Charlie returning after midnight, tired eyes blank, with a man no one recognized. Behind the studio curtain, Charlie was seen hugging the man tightly, a private moment the label tried to hide. The next morning, executives showed up, forced the technician to sign a confidentiality agreement, and threatened to blacklist him if he revealed the incident. From then on, Charlie changed. He became paranoid, avoiding closed doors, requiring all reflective surfaces during performances to be covered with a sheet and muttering, "Nothing is visible." As he found himself homeless in the early 1990s, sleeping behind dumpsters on Hollywood Boulevard, the fear of the 1987 rumors haunted him. Even after he recovered and returned to the spotlight, Charlie never spoke of the event again. The wounds were too deep to open, for if they were, they could erase the entire journey of a survivor. Gerald Levert, Prince of Quiet Storm. His voice was made for confession, soft, shaky, and sincere. But the most important confession was the one he never said. Gerald's story took a dark turn after November 10, 2006, when his family went to his Cleveland home to manage his estate. What they found and deleted became one of the quietest musical mysteries. An eyewitness said Gerald's phone was constantly buzzing with messages, mostly condolences and industry contacts, but one string stood out from someone saved under just an initial urgent, emotional, and personal. The last message, just 2 hours before he collapsed, read simply, "Please stop avoiding me, I'm on my way." The family then deleted the entire conversation before the phone was turned over to the authorities. In the weeks that followed, strange things continued to happen. A man dressed in black once came to the studio at 1:30 a.m. to request Gerald's private files, but was turned away by security and never returned. A producer remembers Gerald often, leaving the studio abruptly after late-night phone calls, returning with red eyes, angry or desperate. More evidence disappeared, photographs torn and discarded, handwritten notes, a suitcase containing secret correspondence under the bed. In public, Gerald was charming, romantic, and a womanizer. In private, he lived in a maze of secrets designed to protect one person, and whatever truth Gerald carried, he carried to the end. The silence surrounding his final messages remains one of Quiet Storm's darkest whispers. These 15 men gave the world everything, their voices, their talent, their youth, but they kept a secret inside. They filled stadiums, sang of love, but lived in fear of being forgotten. Rumors, lost photos, deleted messages. They all told the same story. A deep fear followed them everywhere. Now they are gone, leaving behind echoes and ghosts. Did we love their music, or did we build the closet that destroyed them? If you want to know the dark truth, next register and stay here.